Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the CultureCast. This is our episode on Global Forgiveness Day. And I'm Cody Gilkison. I'm your Senior Manager of DEI. And if you don't know CultureCast, this is the bi weekly podcast about what makes us us. I'm joined today by a special guest. I told you in the month of July, we're going to be highlighting our all new DEI team. So this is our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusions Events Coordinator, Stephanie Prenatt. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That's great. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about your journey, how you came to eXp, what it's been like for you here?
Oh, sure. So I have been with eXp for 7 years. I became a realtor in 2017. And then we only had 5,000 agents. For the last 2 years, I had worked as a CCS, contract compliance for the state of Indiana. And now I have the pleasure of working with you every day as part of the DEI team. So very exciting.
That's great. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So we want to dig right in. So we're celebrating Global Forgiveness Day. For those who don't know, this is a day that's celebrated worldwide. This year it's on July 7th, 2023. And we are just talking about the insight you can gain and the personal freedom you can gain through the act of cultivating a forgiveness mindset. So our first question we're going to ask is, can you share your thoughts on the importance of forgiveness and fostering a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment within eXp Realty for both agents and staff?
Absolutely. So forgiveness, I think, plays a crucial role in creating a positive work environment where everyone feels valued and accepted and respected. I think by practicing this, we can move past understandings where sometimes maybe you couldn't, or we're really hurting our clients or our team members or something else, and it really helps to build a relationship of trust, which is essential to have a diverse background.
Yeah, that's really, really true. And, I would just say that, often in our roles in the DEI world, we have to practice forgiveness because we encounter a lot of, ignorance. So we encounter a lot of people who are not intentionally saying something or doing something to hurt others. They just don't know any better. That's why our job is education. That's why our job is to help people, guide people through those moments. And for that, we have to have a real forgiveness mindset, because we have to look at this compassionately. And we sort of have to have a level of grace under fire that I think others could emulate in their jobs. I'm not just talking about for DEI professionals, but for everybody. There's a little bit of that when somebody comes at you a little sideways. You have to treat it with grace and realize that you may not know what's going on in their life, that kind of thing. Um, you just have compassion for others' lived experiences. You don't know what somebody else is going through. We often saw that, in school, the kid that was the bully had some stuff going on at home, right?
Always.
And that sort of mindset carries over to the workplace, carries over to the real estate world, carries over to our clients, carries over everywhere. Where there's the old adage, hurt people, right? So we have to, take those things into account. That's why that helps us foster this DEI culture, in just, being ready and willing to not always be on the offense about what is offensive to us. Like, oh, you can't say that, that it's, we try to be more conversational and more welcoming and all that business.
I think that's really the key point, just to have that conversation to figure out where you can meet in the middle and why you weren't there in the first place. And that is crucial in forgiveness.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we just did our pronouns training for Pride Month, and that is one that we always tell people. This is a safe space. You can come in and ask questions. The number one reason that people don't want to learn this stuff about pronouns, they want to choose ignorance in that case because they're afraid of asking the wrong question and offending someone, right? So we
Right.
got to give people those spaces to be able to ask, and that comes with forgiveness built in already. When you say you have a safe space for somebody to say something, anything they want to say, that's I'm I've already forgiven you for something you would do in the future, right?
Absolutely.
So that's a good mindset to have, sort of in general. I think a lot of our managers and people that manage people really should keep in mind as well. So talking about forgiveness, I know we I picked you for a reason for this podcast. You have some good insights here. Um, I'd love to know if you could share a personal or professional experience where forgiveness was crucial in resolving a conflict or a misunderstanding, and how it impacted the relationships involved.
So I have two. The first one is a situation where I had to forgive myself. I had, during the height of COVID, I helped my father with the end of life in hospice for 6 months. And he was a very ill man, and I had to learn things, wound care, how to insert an IV, a catheter.
Mhm.
I became a nurse overnight, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know if I was doing it right. I didn't know if I was handling it correctly. And in that situation, I'm still working on it, honestly, forgiving myself for not knowing how to do it or feeling that I was doing it correctly, or maybe I could have done it better, and sometimes I think forgiving yourself is way harder than to forgive someone else, because we all hold ourselves to our own moral compass, right?
Yeah.
And if for some reason you let yourself down personally, it's just so hard to get over that, right?
Mhm.
And on the flip side, some things are just non-negotiables. And someone breaches that boundary, I don't always believe everybody in your life deserves forgiveness. But for my sake, I had to learn how to accept it
Right.
and forgive the situation, maybe not the person, right?
Right.
And that one's totally different, because that's a different podcast on this specific story. But um, sometimes you just can't forgive, but you have to accept. And if you can't do that, then you can't heal and move forward.
Right.
Uh, and I mean, those are mine. Sometimes we're asking for forgiveness, and sometimes we're there to give forgiveness. And for me, sometimes when I have to ask for it is way harder than giving it to someone else.
Yeah, that's really true. And I think, uh, accepting what happened is a key part of the healing process, right? You're not able to move on unless you can accept what happened, and even if you can't give forgiveness, I mean, accepting that doesn't make you a bad person, right? It's another level of forgiveness there for yourself. Um, for me, I've always struggled. I think the age old thing, the first people that anybody has to forgive is their parents, right? And with me, my you guys have probably heard my story before on other episodes of this, or elsewhere in speaking engagements for me. But my parents did not accept the fact that I was gay, right?
Right.
And went through a period of homelessness, and there was a real, when I came out to my dad, he said to me, "Well, I'm just sad for you because you're going to die of AIDS," right? And that uh, led me sort of on a spiral in college, right? Where I went, I was out on my own. I had gotten my way into college on my own without their help. I had, was working jobs to pay for all my stuff, and I was 17, right? So I like just kind of went buck wild, as we say in the South,
Right.
right? Um, but I made a lot of choices that I regret, um, life choices, and put stuff that put me in bad situations with people, and bad situations with, addiction, and just like not, it was not in a healthy place in my life. And it took me a long time to forgive myself for the fact that I was a product of my situation, right? I can't go back and play that how could I have done this better game? What would my life be like if I had chosen a better major, if I had, picked better friends, if I had not dissed this person or that person, if I had chosen not to partake when I did partake. You can't do that to yourself. That's the biggest piece of forgiveness for me, is giving myself the grace to say, like, this is something that happened. Yes, it colors my story, but I have moved on.
And you learn from it, right? That's a key component of that. You wouldn't be the same Cody that you are today without those stories, right? As I would
That's
not be the
true.
same Stephanie. And I am happy where I am. And I would maybe not like to go through the things again that I've gone through, but it made me who I am today.
It's true. It's true. And I really feel like in our positions in the DEI world, we're now able to do some good. And the only reason that we're doing these DEI jobs is because we've been through some stuff, right?
Right.
Um, and with my parents, it really came around to, do I want my parents in my life? Yes. Am I going to have to forgive them for some stuff that they did? Yes. But forgiveness is not always a road back to exactly how it was before, right?
Right.
Forgiveness is a way to pave a new road, um, and sometimes build a wall, because there when somebody does something this untoward with you, then you often have to create a boundary, right?
Absolutely.
And with my parents, they don't have an all access pass to my life because they haven't given me an all access pass to theirs, right?
Right.
They don't, it doesn't do me any good to sit around and wonder about how I could change my mom's mind on this. If she's told me for years, I'm not going to change my mind, right?
Right.
Then it's time for me to say, okay, then you don't get access to this part where you could judge me, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's hard. It's learning how to create those healthy boundaries, I think, sometimes. Um, and it's delicate, right? It's different for every situation, for every person.
It definitely is. Yeah. So let's talk about the psychological and emotional benefits of forgiveness, both for the people we're forgiving and for ourselves as the forgiving party, right?
So, in research for this CultureCast, I looked at the American Psychological Association, and it says that forgiveness is linked to mental health outcomes such as reduced anxiety, depression, and major psychiatric disorders. It even goes as far to say with fewer physical health symptoms, and this one just blew my mind: lower mortality rates, all
Wow.
from the act of forgiveness.
Yeah,
Either
yeah. That's that's yeah, that's huge that the APA even acknowledges that, holding on to a grudge can kill you, is basically what they're saying there, right?
Right. I think that when we finally let go of that grudge, even if the other person's not accepting of their actions or how it makes us, how we are finally free from that stressor in our life. And forgiveness is not something you can see, it's something you're thinking about the whole time. It's something that just sleeps in the back, doesn't sleep. It's just always there in the back of your mind.
Right. And it's a burden, right?
Right.
And we always say, when you have a burden, that's something that you can lift, right? There
Right.
is a way to alleviate the stress of that boulder on your back, right? Um, with this one, it's a little more straightforward. We're talking about forgiveness, or, like we said before, accepting what has happened, and being able to move on. Um, I also want to note here that you always want to protect yourself as well, because not all apologies or sort of granted forgiveness to you is genuine, right? Sometimes people say, that they're sorry, and are they? Right.
Right.
So it's about cultivating the personal relationship with someone in such a way that that you can trust that. when they say it, right? And if you don't feel like you want to get close enough to somebody to garner that sort of reaction, then okay, they gave me their sorry, let's move on, and here's the barrier that I'm going to create, right?
Right. If someone repeatedly says they're sorry and they do not change their actions, and it's manipulation.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
If someone's truly sorry, their actions are going to change because of that.
That's it. Yeah, yeah. It's actions speak louder than words kind of deal, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. There is a sort of idea of penance, right? An idea of, okay, but what are you going to do to make it better, right? And often it's just, I promise I won't behave that way again. I see the error of my ways, right? That can go a long way. It really can.
It can.
I'll tell you, we have had situations where we'd have someone say hurtful things about some of our DEI content. And then when we approach that person to say, can we really think about what you said? You're hurting other people's feelings. Please refrain from this type of comment. When you really dig down and drill in, it's coming from a place, again, of someone who was hurt, who is maybe lashing out because they're hurt, right? And we, more often than not, when we have situations like that, we honestly do come away with the outcome of, I now see the error of my ways, right? And I won't do it again. And I haven't had somebody come back and do that type of thing again after they said, I'm sorry. I see you're right. I shouldn't have said that.
Right? And I think keeping that line of communication open, especially in our digital world, just to pick up the phone and have a conversation, or, be able to talk to that person to see where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
We can meet in the middle where we were not in the middle. I think that's something that we really need to think about sometimes too.
Yeah, that's it. So what are some practical tips and strategies that eXp Realty staff and agents can implement to cultivate this mindset of forgiveness and empathy in their daily interactions with their colleagues and clients?
So there are the 4 R's of forgiveness. Responsibility. You need to accept what has happened and show yourself or someone else compassion, right? Remorse. Let that grief and guilt guide you for a more positive behavior change. That I think is huge. Don't dwell in that remorse, but use it as a tool to propel you forward. Restoration. Make amends, either with yourself or whoever. And, forgiving's hard. It's not easy. It really isn't, no matter who we're talking about. And then renewal. Use this to renew yourself as a person. We're not the same person as we were last year. I'm not going to be the same person next year as I am this year. And it's all these instances in our lives that has made me who I am today and made you who you are today.
That's
and
true.
I'm happy with Stephanie today. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. I am perfectly imperfect, just like the rest of us, right?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And I would say that a practical tip I would give you is that not every act of forgiveness needs to be a physical conversation that you have with another person, right? Sometimes you have to forgive somebody or forgive a situation in your own mind and stick to it.
Absolutely.
Right? That's a large chunk of the forgiveness journey is something that goes on mentally with yourself. For me, when I want to say something to myself that's an affirmation or an act of forgiveness or something like that, I tend to write it down because then the words feel more real to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a personal thing, right?
Right.
Because I can say right now, Stephanie, I forgive you. But like, I I need to like feel that. You know what I mean? And I need to remind myself that I have forgiven you, right? That's an
Right.
example. I don't have to forgive you for anything. But yeah, that's something that I would always say. I sound like a broken record here, but you always have to remember that you don't know what's going on in somebody else's life. That's one of the main strategies that I'll give you when you're encountering people who are coming at you sideways is remember they could have something horrible going on in their life right now that they're not capable of dealing with, and this is their one outlet, right?
Right. Be kind
Um,
and compassionate. I mean, that's
yeah. And I'd also say that holding on to negativity can actually have some very serious health implications. Um, so whatever you need to do to let that out, to purge yourself of it, is worth it, right? As you know, dramatic as it sounds, there have been times when I need to, like with my mom, recently took that trip home to Georgia, encountered some homophobia, really beat myself up for a few days over what can I say to change her mind, right? And it ultimately comes down to the answer is nothing, right? So to stop my brain from spiraling about all the things that I know would be the most compelling arguments to change her mind, I wrote them all down in a letter. Mom, this is what you could do to be more present in my life. This is how you should be framing this conversation. I wish that you would just pay attention to XYZ. Wrote this 4-page letter and I took it outside and I put it in a glass bowl and I set it on fire.
there you go. Right.
And now it's gone. I don't think about it anymore.
Because you have
Um,
to have that conversation with yourself. I mean, forgiveness, you can't see it, but you certainly can feel it at the end
you
of the
certainly
day.
can feel it.
Right.
Yeah. And that, I mean, this sounds like I'm telling you to do some witchy, hokey, middle school type stuff, but I really mean it. And don't go so far as the fire if you don't want to, but writing letters to those who have wronged me or that I have wronged and then never sending them helps me immensely. And it's something that I practice weekly. Helps me process my emotions. It's also really, really, really good to have a non judgmental sounding board, right? I have several of those in my life where I can vent something that went on and just a conversation with them, even if they're not giving me all the answers I want, allows me to explore what I'm feeling, right?
Right.
And then I'm able to process, put it in a box, and put it away, right? Or throw the box out.
Know people, because I mean, you need certain people in your life who will bring up a different perspective. Something, I have so many people in my life that no is a good thing in this situation. They help me explore. They help me work through all different sides,
That's
and
it.
those people really have helped me grow as a
Hmm.
person and just accept everything that's gone on in my life.
Yeah. And when you have those kind of people in your life, the first tip I would give you is if they say something that you do not want to hear, that's not a conversation starter. Let them finish. I mean, it's not a conversation stopper. That's not a deal breaker,
Right.
right? If they if they say, Cody, you're being ridiculous, which it'd be weird if they told you, Cody, you're being ridiculous, unless your name is also Cody. But you know, that's not. Listen to why they think you're being ridiculous, because if you've invited them into this position in your life, they know you pretty well, right?
Right. Right.
And they're giving you some honest feedback. So, how about let's talk about in the context of eXp Realty's commitment to DEI. How can we encourage open conversations about forgiveness and its benefits, and what sort of initiatives can we do to celebrate and promote Forgiveness Day within the company?
Okay. For the first thing, I would encourage everybody to check out our Healthy Mind Collective. They
Hmm.
are a great resource group that puts out phenomenal information, and everyone can benefit from having a healthy mind, right?
It's
Everyone
true.
can.
And we call it that collective because everybody comes in on this evil playing field, this even playing field is what I meant to say. And everybody, gets to have their voice heard. So you can come in and you can, say what you want to say in that group and get feedback. And this is where people go to talk about mental health. And when we're talking about processing forgiveness, it could be a good resource for you.
Absolutely. And then, use this day as a day of reflection. How can you forgive yourself? Who's in your life that you're holding a grudge against? And use this day to really reflect. And I challenge you, try to forgive one person today, just one, and see how much better you feel when you go to sleep tonight, because it's our burden we're carrying, even if we are not the perpetrators of what happened, but it's our burden. So I really do. I challenge everybody to use this day as a day of reflection and see how you can grow.
That's a good point. And I think the flip side of that reflection is think about, is there anybody in my life who I'm seeking forgiveness from, right? Somebody that thinks I wronged them, even if I don't really feel that I did, right? And then reflect, what can I do to fix this? What can I address about my being, my way of collecting myself that could fix this, right? That's another piece of this. Is sometimes we have to admit hard truths about ourselves and admit that we've done something wrong, right? I think I would put out as a way to celebrate Forgiveness Day that I think every person listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, every single one of us has something that we could forgive ourselves for.
Absolutely.
Today's the day to look at yourself in the mirror, address what needs to be changed, give yourself a really solemn apology, and move on.
Right.
That's
I couldn't agree more.
That's it.
And through that, forgiveness, you can really cultivate positive relationships in your life. And that's imperative,
Mm-hmm. And now, now that we saw that thing from the ADA, I had already had that answer prepared for, forgiving oneself or others leads to positive health outcomes. That ADA stat puts it right front and center. They say holding on to that grudge, holding on to that darkness and negativity can kill you, right?
Absolutely.
That's heavy. So
very heavy.
Why do we have an awareness day for forgiveness? Because if you don't do it, you could die, right? Let's put it super bluntly at the very bottom line for everybody. Well, anyway, this has been a really great episode. I appreciate you for being here. Now everybody has a better view of who we are at the DEI team. And I hope you look forward to more episodes of this in the future. Stephanie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. See ya.
Bye, guys.